Welcome to the Onion Buns. So, will the real Mark Carney stand up? I'm going to show you the real Mark Carney. It's not pretty. It's actually really ugly. But, all right, so let's get started on this.
I don't think so. We're not going to open the door anymore. No. Okay, not for anybody. Because we're trying to come up to the main entrance there now. If one of the buildings in there now, but you point it out to the bottom. You're right. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I'm not worried about you. Is that their goal?
They want to ask questions. So there you saw it. And that was the CBC, no less. The CBC couldn't even figure out a way to manipulate this to benefit Mark Carney. He locked the doors so that fishermen could not ask him questions. This is how transparent Mark Carney is. I keep telling you, he doesn't give a shit about Canadians. Be it East Coast, West Coast, Alberta, Saskatchewan, he only cares about Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. Some people said Atlantic Canada, but that video shows he doesn't care about Atlantic Canada. This is what you get with Mark Carney. It's not a pretty picture, people. All right, here we go with the latest star candidate for Mark Carney's Liberal government. He's a real doozy.
Meet Evan Solomon, Mark Carney's new star candidate.
Evan Solomon is gone from the CBC after a report alleging he brokered art deals with people with whom he was involved as a journalist.
And who was buying this art through Solomon?
If Evan Solomon, it seems, could introduce this art collector to some famous and influential people like Jim Balsillie, formerly of Research in Motion and BlackBerry, and Mark Carney.
Evan Solomon rightfully lost his taxpayer-funded job after brokering corrupt art deals for Mark Carney. And now Carney is rewarding him by trying to make him an MP. Share this video to let Canadians know that Mark Carney is continuing the Liberal Party's tradition of shameless corruption.
New guy's the same as the old guy. The walking papers in the Canadian Liberal Party is corruption, lack of ethics, more corruption, more lack of ethics, and I guess criminal behavior. But hey, whatever. That's all good, right? Because it's Mark Carney and the CBC told you to like him. Alrighty, so for the next video clip, we have the former British Prime Minister talking about Mark Carney. You've seen the headlines. The UK papers are coming out daily telling us not to elect Mark Carney. But there's this left-wing radical segment of Canada that I actually read some more on, and that's being really nice to that person who was trying to say the UK papers was telling us not to elect Pierre Poilievre. No, the UK papers have been telling us not to elect Mark Carney. That's who they have been warning us against, not Pierre Poilievre, against Mark Carney. But don't take my word for it. Please don't. Listen to the former UK Prime Minister.
Extraordinary that Mark Carney has become the Prime Minister of Canada. He did a terrible job in Britain of the governorship of the Bank of England. He created a lot of the problems that blew up on my watch and that I got blamed for were actually created by him. He backed...
Okay, clearly she has an agenda here, but she's got to carry some of the blame because she kept him in power. But that still doesn't erase what he did, and that's the part you need to listen to.
Labour in the election and Rachel Reeves's policies which are leading the country to bankruptcy. So why on earth the Liberal Party of Canada has selected this man, I have no idea. And I think it is illegitimate that this guy has never been elected as a member of Parliament in Canada.
Absolutely.
I'm utterly puzzled. And the Canadians, I'm not going to tell the Canadians how to vote. Obviously, I want the Conservatives to be elected in Canada. But I think it's Justin Trudeau has pursued a lot of the same policies that Europe has been pursuing. Yep. And America is raced ahead of us. back at the turn of the millennium, the average Brit was catching up with the average American in terms of income per head.
True.
We are now $34,000 a year behind. We're poorer.
We are even further behind than they are, thanks to Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney.
The Mississippi, which is the poorest American state. And the same is true of France and Germany, and to some extent of Canada, because they pursued all of these woke policies.
Yep.
High taxes, high spending, not using their natural resources. And Justin Trudeau was the architect of that. And of course, Mark Carney has been the advocate of these policies. So I don't know what is going on in Canada, but in the same way as I think people in Britain need to wake up to what the real threat to our country is, I think they need to wake up in Canada.
There's an old saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We've done the same thing as Britain did. We've done the same thing as France and Germany have done. And we are getting the same result for the last decade. Now, what she didn't mention is 5 of those years in that decade are on Mark Carney. Mark Carney was Justin Trudeau's chief financial advisor, economic advisor. So all the failed policies that Justin Trudeau put through were either initiated or approved by Mark Carney. So his hands are not clean on this, but you just heard her. Yes, she has an agenda. That's very obvious, but it doesn't change the facts. UK is suffering because they had Mark Carney in the Bank of England. Canada is suffering because we've had Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau for the last 10 years. This is who Mark Carney does. This is what he does. Mark Carney made billions while collapsing the economies of these countries because he was invested in the UK or in the United States. He sold American coal to China, the largest carbon footprint producer in the world, and Carney sold coal to them to increase their carbon footprint. He built pipelines through the Middle East while blocking pipelines in Canada. He cut down 22,000 acres of the Brazilian rainforest and displaced a primitive culture society. Also, he can make a few bucks for Brookfield. He got the Peruvian government to fund building roads that he built as toll roads that charge such an exorbitant amount, none of the population, except for the top 2% of the wealthiest, can drive on the roads. They can't afford, everyone else can't afford it. This is who Mark Carney is. This is what Mark Carney does. So Mark Carney is a pathological liar, and this video is just going to showcase some of the stuff he's been flip-flopping and lying on. And yeah, so let's go watch it.
In which way will Mark Carney lead Canada? First, he supported Trudeau's consumer carbon tax plan, which rises higher every year. Now he says he'll cut the consumer carbon tax, but he'll still charge it on Canadian industries.
Okay, he didn't cut it. He paused it. I wish people would start using the right terminology on this, because the carbon tax is not gone. It has not been cut. To cut the carbon tax, you need to open Parliament. He refused. You need to have a vote in Parliament. He refused to open Parliament, so you can't have the vote. If the vote passes, then it goes to the Senate. Then the Senate has to vote on it. If the vote passes there, then it goes to the Governor General, who signs her name, and it becomes law. That is how you kill the carbon tax. What he did was he paused it in a very Trump-like ceremony, which was a complete sham because Canada does not have executive orders. So he was just doing theatrics there for the CBC and CTV and Toronto Red Star. The carbon tax is not gone. But what is true is he's already announced he's going to raise the industrial carbon tax to 2 to 3 times the level that it currently sits at. So what's going to happen is the industries are going to take all that new cost and they're going to put it on the consumer. So we're just paying a hidden carbon tax now, but it's much higher than what the old consumer carbon tax was. That's all he did, people. He did not get rid of the carbon tax.
As Trudeau's advisor, he supported record mass immigration. But after a housing and healthcare crisis, he now says he supports lower immigration. He's
who wants to bring in 100 million people to Canada. And then he brought in another minister, and I've shown you these people in this video. Brought in another minister who wants that 100 million to be unvetted. No research done. Bring them in. That is his policy. He says one thing, but look at his actions. He does another every single time.
supported Trudeau's record high spending, which left Canada with a massive deficit and sky-high inflation. Now, he claims he'll be fiscally responsible.
He's not actually announced a single cut. He says he's going to cut spending, but he hasn't actually announced or even suggested how he's going to cut it. The only thing he's announced is a higher industrial carbon tax, so maybe that's where he thinks he's going to make the money, because he hasn't shown us anything on how he's going to lower spending. He just sent $100 million to Hamas, a terrorist organization fighting Israel, but he's going to cut costs.
Mark Carney, he can't be trusted to put Canada first.
It's like we're in an abusive relationship where we get the shit beat out of us and we forgive the assaulter. That's what Mark Carney reminds me of. A serial abuser that always gets forgiven. We shouldn't be forgiving him. So Carney brought in his buddy, Mark Wiseman. Mark Wiseman is connected to the Century Initiative that wants to bring 100 million people into Canada. That's not a typo or a misspeak. 100 million. We just basically destroyed our economy in the last 10 years, bringing in just a little portion of that, because we don't have the housing, we don't have the jobs, we don't have the infrastructure. Carney doesn't care. He wants to bring in 100 million. So he just got this guy. So I'm going to show you the video introducing this guy, and you can see I'm not lying about this. So yeah, Carney advisor Mark Wiseman says Canada shouldn't screen immigrants so we can bring in as many as possible. How's that worked out for us so far without vetting immigrants? We've been overrun by Mexican cartels, by terrorists, by criminals. And this idiot wants to bring in more.
Part of the answer here is a private sector answer. Let the private sector move to bring people in and facilitate them being able to do that. And, you know, a lot of the screening and other stuff that we do, frankly, is just bureaucracy. It's a waste of time. Let's let people in by and large, and if we have to do the screening ex post, that's fine. I can tell you, bad guys and bad women probably find their way into this country through means other than applying through permanent residency.
Okay, he's lying. Because prior to Trudeau, Canada had what was known throughout the world as the grade A immigration policy. Now, yes, a few bad guys did sneak in. Nothing's ever perfect. Like, these guys love to talk in absolutes. Absolutes do not work. A few are going to sneak in. But by and far, we caught and removed the bad guys by vetting them, by screening them. We made sure they didn't come into our country. We sent them back to their original countries. He's ignoring that.
Like, let's just face that, right? So we just need.
So yeah, let's just ignore the reality and the truth and go with his little unicorn fart theory here.
Need to sort of take this on as a challenge and a problem, have KPIs, and then partner with the private sector. I mean, look at this anachronistic way of these labor market opinions, those who've tried to hire somebody from outside the country to do a job. I mean, it's crazy. Guess what? A Canadian firm wants to hire somebody from outside the country. They've identified them, they interviewed them, they want to pay them, and that individual is going to be taxed in Canada. Approved. What's that mortgage ad? Approved. Right? Like we should get those guys to be running our immigration system.
Okay.
This is one of Mark Carney's newest ministers. in his cabinet. This is the type of people he is surrounding himself with. These are the type of people that he wants you to vote for. When you put Mark Carney in power, this is what you're getting. Wake up, Canada. So that's the end of this video. I feel dirty just making it. I'm starting to get a headache every time I have to say the name Mark Carney. It just makes me feel ill. What I didn't cover here is all of Justin Trudeau's cabinet members that he brought back in as well. We're talking some of the most despicable, radical extremists, alt-left sociopaths on the face of the earth, and he brought them back. This Liberal cabinet that Mark Carney is building, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's 10 times worse than what Trudeau did. And I never thought I'd say that in my life. I consider Justin Trudeau to be the worst prime minister in Canadian history. And in, what's it been, 10 days? Carney's already eclipsed him. And that's baffling to me. That's absolutely baffling to me. So anyway, there you go. This is the real Mark Carney. There's nothing good to say about him. I've followed this stuff really close, and I've not seen a single good thing to say about him. Any of the policies that you might want to support, Poilievre's put out first, and Poilievre put them out better. So, as I've said before, I'm giving the creator of those policies the nod, not the copycat pretender. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe, please. I'm trying to grow the channel, so like, subscribe, and share helps me immensely. If you didn't like the video, leave a dislike. Always feel free to leave a comment. Don't worry, I don't swing my cane too strongly anymore if I dislike your comment. And as always, pew, 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Bye.